I'm Kyla and this is the Infinite Library. So, this is a little bit delayed, me getting my October wrap-up and Spookpolathan vlog up. I was basically ill for pretty much the last little bit of October and the whole first week of November, so I just didn't get around to being able to do my wrap-up for this, so it's a little bit delayed, but thankfully I was basically vlogging throughout the whole of October as I was going through like the process of reading the books. I was also doing a little project, so there's a couple of books that didn't end up on my Spookopoly board rolls, and I'm going to go over those first. So before we start, let's do the stats. Okay, so the stats for October. It was actually my best reading month all year, pretty much. I managed to read 21 books, plus a DNF, plus one that I started but didn't finish, so that's going into November, so kind of 23 books, but if we're counting books I actually finished, 21 books, which is my record for this year in a month. So Spookpolathan treated me well, apparently. I was just super into reading this month. I read 4,572 pages in total for the month, which is an average of 147 pages per day, which I'm pretty impressed by. So don't get me wrong, there's some graphic novels, there's some manga in that kind of thing. I've also read some middle grade, which is sort of a lot shorter in terms of how many words are on a page, because there's pictures and that kind of thing. So I'm not taking it as kind of like I'm reading full 147 pages a day, but I'm pretty happy with that. I think I still managed to, as you'll see, read a good number of novels as well as like the kind of easier formats. So speaking of format, of the books, I read 22 of them physically and one by audio. I finally have listened to something in audio. It was unexpected and you'll see why it happened, but it was nice having that experience for once, and maybe I will actually try audiobooks properly in the future. So, genre-wise, of the books, I had 12 fantasy, 6 horror, 2 manga, 2 graphic novels, and 1 non-fiction. And where I got these from, the source, 17 of these books were from my TBR, so I really was cracking out what's on my list this month, which was great. So 17 from the TBR, 1 of them I bought, and 2 of them were from the library, and finally the last one, which was the audio, was online. So star rating wise, it wasn't bad. I didn't give out any 5 stars this month, which is a shame, but I think generally I had a decent reading month. So I had no 1 stars, thankfully. I did have 4 2 stars, which you will see. I had 10 3-star books, which was the highest amount, and then I had 7 4-star books. So that gives me an overall average rating of 3.41. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, honestly. That isn't a bad rating for the month. And I feel like for me, 3 is generally a book that I've liked. Maybe I haven't loved it, but I've had a good time. So if I can get like an average of like the 3 to 4 star a month, I'm happy. 2 and a 1-star books for me are ones that I haven't had a good time with. So we had 4 of those. A lot of them were short, so I'm not going to be too upset about those, thankfully. And they were ones that a lot of them I think were ones I had to read for projects. Going on to the actual books I read then. So first, we're going to go and have a look at the books that I read that were not part of the Spookopoly board. So these were ones that I had started them because I just wanted to read them. One of them I had started just before October started, and I've just kind of been reading it throughout. And that was, this is my non-fiction, which is an anthology of essays called It Came From the Closet, and it's all about queer reflections and horror. So basically each chapter goes over, it's kind of, they're all sort of split into parts, which kind of like categorizes them. So like, for example, part 1 is An Excellent Day for an Exorcism, so it's all kind of about exorcism movies. And then you've got other parts as well, which, talk about fatal attractions, sleep, that kind of thing. And each essay is written by someone who is queer. There's also a lot of writings by people who are Black, people who are Asian, people who don't necessarily fit into that typical sort of white straight role, and it's all talking about their interpretations on various horror movies and specific horror movies that spoke to them. So I love horror movies, so I have had my eye on this for a while, and I really wanted to read it during Halloween month. So I was just kind of like reading this gradually throughout the month. I was just picking up an essay here and there. So I didn't read all of the essays. I think there's 26 essays in here. I read maybe 19, 20 of them. The only ones I didn't read were because they were specifically from movies that I haven't seen yet, and they were ones that I didn't really want to have spoiled for me, so I didn't end up watching the one about Friday the 13th Part 2. I didn't watch the one about Hereditary or Grace, but I read pretty much all the others. There was a couple of movies in there that I'd never heard of, which was interesting to find out about them, and they were probably not ones I would want to read anyway. But there were a lot of, there was some movies that I really like, so it had stuff like Us, it had The Blair Witch Project, it had Halloween, obviously, Sleepaway Camp, The Ring, Godzilla, unusually, Jennifer's Body, which was actually written by one of the main reasons why I got this book, because it was written by Carmen Maria Machado, who is a writer who I really enjoy. So yeah, it was all really interesting. I don't think there was any I disliked from this. So yeah, I would recommend it. I think I overall gave it about 4 stars, and I can see it being one that I will kind of go back to. Especially once I watched a couple of the remaining movies that I didn't want spoiled for me. So that was something I was reading throughout the month. So the other thing I read this month, which definitely contributes to the large number, is that for a project, I read all 8 books in the Worst Witch series by Jill Murphy. So a lot of these are quite short, as you can see, and they have illustrations throughout. For anyone that doesn't know, this is a middle grade fantasy series about a girl who goes to a school for witches and kind of gets into a lot of scrapes. So yeah, this was a very nostalgic kind of childhood favourite for me. And not all the books are great. I don't think I even loved all the books back when I was younger myself. But I'm not going to go into the ratings for all of these because I have a whole vlog that's going to be coming soon, which is basically going to kind of go over my ratings. But I had a good experience sort of going over these again, and it was like, I did enjoy reading them, even if some of them didn't necessarily fall into my favourite books of the month. They are kind of some of the reason for some of my 2 stars, unfortunately. But I had a good time overall, so that is an 8-book series that didn't make it in the Spookopoly because I was keeping it separate. So the final book I read that wasn't part of Spookopoly was my book club book. I tried so many times to get it into the Spookopoly, but unfortunately it didn't work. And that was Hell Followed Withers by Andrew Joseph White. And I really enjoyed this one. I went into it sort of very wary, mostly because one of the main things I'd heard about it was the content being incredibly graphic, incredibly upsetting. There's a lot of body horror in it. And I wasn't sure if it would be something that I would enjoy or if it's something that I would just kind of find it depressing and upsetting. But thankfully, it was exactly my brand of horror. I won't say it wasn't upsetting and depressing, but it was enjoyable for me. It's very much basically one of the things the author says about it is that it's all about queer rage, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I think a decent number of people in my book club also enjoyed it, so I'm glad it was a winner. I think rating wise, let me check what I gave it. I think I gave it I gave it a high 4, so it wasn't quite a 5-star for me, but it was probably the closest this month to getting to it, so I gave it sort of a 4.5 or 4.75. I really enjoyed it. I definitely want to pick up the next book in the series, it's not a series, but the next book by this author that deals with similar themes. So this is a modern day horror book, essentially. And it's about a 16-year-old trans boy called Benji who is sort of on the run from this crazy cult that raised him. And the whole world is kind of in this like dystopian, almost post-apocalyptic environment. It's a little bit Walking Dead, honestly. And there's basically this virus that's gone round, which has killed a lot of people. And Benji is kind of struggling because before he left, the cults basically implanted this like bioweapon inside him, which is slowly taking him over. It's slowly changing him into this like monstrous creature who the cult believes is kind of going to be like their savior, who will cleanse the world. So he finds refuge. It's a LGBTQ center, and ends up sort of teaming up with a group of like people who are trying to stop this with them, and I just really enjoyed it. I think the only reason that meant I didn't give it a 5-star was that there just wasn't quite enough depth in the characters. I really wanted to get much deeper into the heads of the main two especially than we really got. There were a few just like misses, I think, in terms of that, so I didn't necessarily feel as attached as I would like to have done, particularly with the other boy. They kind of form a bond together with Nick. I didn't really like him that much. Not in like, he's not supposed to be a necessarily likable character, but I never really got inside his head as much. I thought Benji was really well written. I really enjoyed them as a character. But again, it was a case of there was a lot that happened in this book, and I almost wanted it to be a little bit slower at times, just to let us get much deeper into the heads of the characters. So that is pretty much one of my only complaints about this. I really enjoyed it otherwise. Definitely check content warnings if this is something that you might want to read, because it goes hard on the body horror. There's a lot of homophobia, obviously. But yeah, I had a good time with it, and I'm glad. So yeah, that was that book. So now we're finally getting into what I rolled for Spookpolathan. So basically, this is a kind of Monopoly-inspired prompt game run by Becca in the Books. Usually it's just kind of like an any genre kind of thing. I think she does it like throughout the year or just in November. But she decided to do on a specific Halloween themed one this year, and that's up my alley. And I basically didn't know what I wanted to read in October, but I just wanted to read as many kind of creepy seasonal books as I could. And as you'll see, my kind of my TBR is big, and a massive portion of that TBR fits into that like scary, spooky, magical kind of thing that is Halloween. So I figured this was a perfect chance for me to get through some of them. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Kyla of the Past doing their first rolls. My first roll, I got They're Burning All the Witches, Even If You Aren't One. That is essentially to read a witchy book. I actually had a couple of different options for this. I had Slewfoot was one, but I decided to choose between these three in the end. So I've got This Coven Won't Break by Isabel Sterling, which is the sequel to These Witches Won't Burn that I read quite recently. I have The Witchery by S. Isabel. And then I finally have The X-Hex by Erin Sterling. So those were my three options, I think, for this. But I think I am probably going to go with This Coven Won't Break, because I am just really itching to get back to these characters. I read it not that long ago, the first book, and I don't want to leave it too long to get to this one in case I kind of forget the characters. So I think I'm gonna start off the month with this book. Okay, so the sequel I read pretty quickly. I finished it in like a day or two, and unfortunately I didn't like it as much as the first book, which made me really sad. I'm glad I got to it as soon after the other one I did, but it just didn't click with me as much as the first book, which is a shame. It was, understandably, because of events which happened in the first book, much sadder in tone, much more depressing in tone, and I enjoyed the lighter tone that the first book had, that kind of discovering a new romance, that kind of thing. So I think I didn't hate it, but I think I gave the first book a 4-star and this one I gave a 3-star. So I would probably carry on the series if Isabel Sterling writes more. But I was just kind of disappointed with this series. One of the things that it's just a little bit of an annoyance for me. So we have these 4 characters on the main cover. So we have sort of like our main 2. I can't really go into much detail about the characters because it will just spoiler the first book essentially. But we have sort of like 3 characters. The main girl, the new girl she has a crush on, and her friend. Who were on the first book, and then we have an additional character who's come into it. And honestly, I don't think the friend should have been there on this first book. I get what she was trying to do with having it being like the 4 girls on the cover, but really, Gemma just wasn't in it. So having her here on the front cover just felt like a bit of a miss to me. If we were going to have someone else on the front cover, honestly, I think it should have been Cal. Cal was in the first book. He was an interesting character. He was a trans boy who works in the magic shop, and his role is much more integral in this book than Gemma's is. He's got a lot more screen time. We find out more about him, and really, I honestly think that Cal should have been here instead of Gemma. But that's just my little complaint. Basically, what happens in this book is that there's a new threat that the characters are dealing with. They kind of end up getting involved with this new character who is like a magician, essentially. And it was okay, but I didn't enjoy it as much. Being inside Hannah's head was not a good time in this book. She is understandably extremely traumatized after events that happened in the first book. But she was also a little bit infuriating at times because she just wasn't listening to the advice that people were giving her. And it just ended up hurting her in the long run. And it was just really frustrating trying to see people help her and her just not helping herself, basically. So I think that I didn't enjoy the storyline as much either. I didn't think the plot was quite as interesting as the first book. So yeah, unfortunately this one did miss the mark a little bit with me. I would maybe read more in the series because I do like the world, I do like the characters. I didn't like the new character, unfortunately though. But yeah, not bad, but sadly did not stand up to the first book. So it's time to do my second roll to determine what I'm going to be reading next in my TBR. So we're currently on They're Burning the Witches Even If You Aren't One. So let's roll and see where Froggy is going next. Okay. Okay, we have a 8. So, let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh, spooky is the next one. Okay, so with the prompt of spooky, this is essentially anything that kind of falls into that vein. So anything kind of occulty, not necessarily a horror. So I actually have quite a lot to choose from. I'm actually feeling something a little bit more serious after Our Coven Won't Break, which was quite light. What is yelling at me? Oh, Evil Within, actually. That's quite tempting. I wouldn't mind a graphic novel next. And I love the cover of this one. So, this is a graphic novel based off of a video game that I really love called The Evil Within. It had 2 games, actually. And a friend of mine bought me this, I think, for Christmas a few years back, and I haven't got to it yet. So, this one might be good. It's kind of a prequel to the game, I think. So basically, Evil Within is about this detective whose wife has disappeared and his daughter died in a fire, and he ends up sort of going to investigate this place with his partner and another woman from the detective agency that he works for the police, sorry, not the detective agency. And things get really weird, and it kind of ends up going into this like odd otherworld thing, which is all tied up with his past trauma. So yeah, I might go for this one as my spooky. I might also go with The Salt Grows Heavy as well by Cassandra Core. It's quite short because it's such an open prompt is the thing, so I kind of don't want to pick anything too specific that could be useful for other roles. So I think that is definitely one that I may go with for this. And let's see, is anything really yelling at me? The Loney, maybe? Silver Nitrate I would like to get to, but I think I am feeling something a bit shorter, so I think... Let's have a quick read again about what this one's about, because I don't know. Myths are full of lies, this is not one of them. Fleeing the downfall of an empire, a mermaid and her plague doctor companion escape into the eerie shadows of a wintry forest. Amongst the bark and snow, they are drawn into ancient games for ageless children, a murderous hunt of blood and sacrifice, deep in the woods where three who call themselves saints rule over them all like gods. Trapped in a feverish nightmare of masked monsters, stitches and surgeons, and needle teeth, the mermaid must embrace all of her cruelty and hungers to free the children. It does sound interesting, but I think I am leaning towards Evil Within. Okay, so it turns out this has a reserve on it already at the library, so I am probably going to pick this for my spooky read instead, and hopefully I can read Evil Within for something else in the month. So yeah, that's the update. So I don't have a physical copy at the moment of The Salt Grows Heavy because it was a library book that I had to take back, so I'm just going to put a little visual for it here whilst I talk about it. So I went into this one with trepidation because I read Cassandra Core's other first book, Nothing But Black and Teeth. I still have it somewhere around here. Yeah, there we go. I still have it, but I didn't like it. I rated it maybe 2 stars or something. I probably have been close to throwing it out, because this one just didn't work for me at all. But I'm surprised to say that The Salt Grows Heavy worked for me. It really worked for me. I don't know if... I think part of the issue with Nothing But Black and Teeth is that I don't think the modernish setting and the modern characters really work for the writing style that Cassandra Core has. She has a very sort of beautiful, flowery writing style that can go incredibly grotesque. And I think it fits the story and the world so much better for The Salt Grows Heavy. So basically this book is kind of set in like... It doesn't really tell you where it's set, but you kind of get this idea that we're somewhere in olden times, the world is insane, things are crazy. That is the setting, basically. So we are following a mermaid who has recently kind of like gotten rid of the person who married her, given birth to a bunch of children, and is now leaving to try and find where she wants to go next, mostly to return to the sea. And she is accompanied by a plague doctor, and it's... not a lot happens, honestly. The book is just kind of like an examination of these two characters and this kind of like growing sort of relationship that the two have. And they're just sort of traveling across the country, and then they end up getting involved in this like really creepy cult thing with a bunch of kids. It is extreme on the body horror, I'll tell you that, but it works. And I think because compared to the first book, which has just regular humans as the main characters, you see all this from the mermaid's perspective. And she is completely monstrous, but it makes sense. So seeing all this, like, there's almost like a beauty in the horror of everything that she sees, and it doesn't faze her. And yeah, I really liked this one. So it was a 4-star for me overall. It's quite a short book. It's only a novella, much like Nothing But Black and Teeth. But I think what just didn't really work for me in this book worked perfectly in The Salt Grows Heavy. So I would try this author again now, because they've had like this one big miss, which I know it's not a very popular book either. I think it's got a very low rating on Goodreads. But for me, this really worked with The Salt Grows Heavy. It was having this historical, very brutal setting, rather than it just being people experiencing something horrific, actually having it be something horrific, finding beauty in something horrific. It just worked. So yeah, that was my second book of the month. On to the next one. Okay, so time for the third roll. I am currently on Spooky, so let's see what we get this time. No doubles yet. We have a 3 and a 5 and 8. So number 8 actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Black Cat. So we have Black Cat, which basically is to read a book with a cat on the cover, or a cat sort of featuring as a character in one of the books. I actually have no idea if any of these have cats in, so let's take a quick look. I don't know if any of these actually feature a cat. I may need to pick something that isn't necessarily on my, we have a crow, but not a cat. I may need to pick something that isn't actually on my main TBR. Okay, so I didn't have any luck. Not one of these had a cat on the cover, and I don't think any of them have them as a character either. But I have If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura, which is just a short little novella. I feel like it may potentially get a little bit dark. So yeah, you know what? We're gonna go for this one as my black cat, and it's a little black cat as well, so perfect. So for the Black Cat prompt, I read If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. This wasn't really kind of fitting with like the scary spooky books that I was trying to read this month, but I didn't have much options with Black Cat, and honestly this was short and I wanted to read it because I felt like it was going to be emotional and I felt like it was going to hit me. And I was right. I think I rated this a 4-star in the end. It's a very soft, sad book. Basically, it is about a man who gets a terminal diagnosis, and he finds out that there is very little time left for him before he dies. And the devil comes to him and sort of like makes a deal with him, and he says, oh, well, I can extend your life by another day, guaranteed, if you just choose to get rid of one thing in the world. And each of the little chapters is basically exploring him, like, going around the world on this day with this thing that has vanished, and how that's kind of like affected things. And he realizes how these things that maybe he thought were not important have affected so many aspects of his life. It was really good. It was certainly not a happy read, but I really enjoyed reading it. It really got me. His cat, called Cabbage, is so cute. It's also surprisingly comedic at times. I think this is what stops it from being a really depressing, sad read, is that there's a surprising amount of comedy in it. The devil himself is quite comedic. There's a lot of introspection, obviously, in a book like this. Basically, this main character kind of realizes that he hasn't got very many connections to people, and he discovers more about the connections to people than he realised throughout the course of the book. I would probably read more by this author if they wrote other things, and I really liked it. Right, so on to roll 4. Our last one was Black Cat, so let's roll again and see what our next one is going to be. A 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, candy corn! So I got candy corn, which means all vibes and no stakes. A sweet book, which not many of mine are, but I do have the X-Hex, which I think might work for what I'm doing. So, yep, I guess that is my 4th read. So unfortunately, this didn't work for me. This was my DNF of the month. As you know, I'm not really much of a romance fan. This is kind of it's a typical kind of rom-com sort of book, I think. And I was like, I'll give it a try. I've heard really good things about it. I like the whole setting of it being like in this kind of like Halloween townish sort of place. And I thought it did sound like it was going to be interesting, but it just didn't work for me. I managed to get like about 100 pages or so in. I think I got to where the main two went to a cave, and it was just too much for me at that point. I was like, I'm not invested. I don't enjoy these characters. I didn't like either of the two characters in the slightest. And when it hit that point, I was like, oh, I don't care what happens to these two. I don't care about seeing how these two characters inevitably get together. So I know this is a really popular one, but it just wasn't for me, unfortunately. So this will be one that I am unhauling. Okay, it's Spookopoly time. Pepsi is joining apparently for this. See how she finds it. Okay, so the last one we had was candy corn. So, we're close to a Becca wreck. A community shelf would be really cool. Or a chance, because I've not had any of these yet, so let's see. Ooh, a 10. That's a high number. Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh no. Oh, big book. Over 500. Okay, cool. I mean, I've definitely got something like that here. I was really hoping to get something that would let me read my book club book, but I don't think this one is 500 words. No, it's only like 400, so not this time, I guess. Okay, I'm gonna look and see which ones are over 500. Maybe from a Buke 8, because I do really want to get to that one. Another 2001 is definitely over 500. I would prefer to read something that I've had on my TBR a bit longer, so give me a minute and we'll find out what we're getting. Okay, I just looked at From a Buke 8. Look at that. No! Why is it just under 500? Oh, annoying. Okay. Right, well, it's not going to be this one then, I guess. Oh, shame. Okay, so I've picked out the only 2 books that are over 500 pages in my stash. I really thought Rebecca was going to be, because it's quite chunky, but alas, it is also just under, so that one doesn't count, sadly. So I'm between Harry the Ninth, which is one I'd like to get to, because it is... I really enjoyed the first book. It's a slightly damaged copy. I got it really cheap from Forbidden Planet because it had that bit of damage there. I don't know if I want this one or not yet. It was one I wanted to take my time more with. So I'm leaning towards another 2. God, it's so chunky. I'm leaning towards this one. I only found it in the library the other day, but it is quite chunky. It is definitely over 500 pages. It's like 550. Let's reread what it's about because I don't remember. Hi. Okay. Forgive my face. I've just come out of the shower. But let's read what this is about and see if I prefer this one over Harry the Ninth. It has been 3 years since the calamity of 1998 that claimed the lives of many students in Yomayama North Middle's Class 3. After So Hiratsuka, an acquaintance of 1998 survivor Mei Misaki. Oh, I just realised what this is! This is based around the anime, another... Oh, wow, I did not realise that. I thought this was, like, something completely different. And I was like, wait, why do I know that name, May? Okay, I'm more interested now. That was a fun anime. Discovers that he's being placed into the cursed class. He and his peers develop a series of countermeasures to avert a new tragedy. But when So's classmates and their family members begin dying in a series of horrific accidents, he and May realise that the calamity has taken hold of their town once again. To stem the tides of death, the pair will be forced to reckon with Yomayama's deepest mysteries. So, I've seen this so many times. I didn't even click with the fact that the girl on the cover looks a little bit like the girl in the anime. The animation is very different in terms of style. I'm just going to show some visuals here of it. But yeah, I had no idea that this was related to this. I just thought it looked interesting and it looked spooky, and I apparently didn't click that it was based off... I mean, I guess maybe it was a novel originally anyway, and it became an anime. But I think the anime is the more well-known version of it, and it doesn't say anything about it being, like, an anime originally. So I had no idea, but I think with that... and because it's a library book, which means I do want to get to it soon before it gets a reservation on it, I am going to have to go with this because I'm really intrigued about what this sequel is going to be. So yeah, I guess that is my over 500 pages book. Alright, forgive how unorthodox this is, but here is our Illumicrate box. Super excited to read this. Here it is. Wait, it's a chunky boy. Oh, it's purple. I'll set you down a second whilst I unwrap this. Ooh, it is gorgeous. Here it is. It's very chunky. Ooh, those edges though. That's gorgeous. Ooh, it is indeed a chunky boy. Let's have a look inside it. Ooh. Oh, who have we got? Yes. Looks like a real signature, not a digital signature. Who rules Castellane rules the whole world. Ooh, we have a map. Love a map. Let's see if we have an end cover. Ooh, we do. We have the girl. That's very cool. Ooh, we've got some lovely gilded edges here. Oh, yes. More on the side. Tales of the Sorcerer King. Oh, that's so nice. That's really pretty. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I know there's like absolutely loads of editions of this coming out at the moment, but I'm pretty happy with this version. Yeah, looking forward to reading this in the very near future. Okay, so little update. I know I'd picked this as my over 500 book, but I don't know if I'm really feeling like reading it right now, especially because it's based off something else, and I haven't watched the Another anime in a couple of years now, so I do want to read this, but I think I want to read it once I've rewatched the anime, or maybe watched the light novel, the light novel before it, so that I can go into it and actually remember who all the characters are, because there was a lot of characters from what I remember in this. So instead, and I'm itching to get to it anyway, I think I'm going to swap in for Swordcatcher, which is most definitely over 500 pages. It's more, definitely. I think it's probably about yeah, it's like 600 or something, but I want to get to it anyway, so I think I'm going to start this instead and swap this in. So there's not much I can say about this book, because as you can see, I'm only just over halfway through it. I did not finish it. I'm going to be finishing it in November, and I was kind of expecting that, to be honest, when I rolled the big book tab, because the only way I would have really finished it is if I devoted pretty much all my time at home, my reading time, to reading it to finish it, and I just wanted to be able to read more books than just this for the whole of the month. So I am enjoying it, I will say. It took a while for me to get into it. I'm not going to go too much into it because I will likely go over it in my November wrap-up now, but I'd say for me it's around the point of between a 3 and a 4 star. It's not going to be a 5 star. It took me way too long to get invested. I am now invested, thankfully, and I'm quite enjoying it. I like the characters, I like the storyline. I find the writing a bit dense, which is not what I expect from Cassandra Clare. So that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to get into it. That, and I just feel like the plot is moving quite slowly, to be honest, and this is an absolutely massive chunky book, but it doesn't need to be as slow as it was at the beginning. So yeah, I have nothing more to say about that at the moment. So yeah, let me know your thoughts below if you've read it already, if you really enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it. I'm kind of intrigued. I've been trying to stay away from reviews at the moment, but I've heard mixed things. So yeah, I'll carry on with this and I'll let you know my thoughts in my November video. Okay, so on to the next roll. After I got my big book, I'm really hoping for something that will let me read my book club book, please. So, I guess of those ones, it could be in Community Shelf. It might be if I got... Wow, and none of those apparently. Wait, I want to go over here, I guess, so I guess we'll see. Alright, come on dice, don't fail me. Ooh, a low number. 5. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, Community Shelf. Okay, so it's Community Shelf. So it's any of these. Okay, I have shuffled them. And let's see what we get. Read a sequel. Oh no. Okay. I don't have a lot with sequels. But I am reading the Higurashi manga at the moment, so I might just read the next one of that series, because the only sequel I have is ones that I've not started yet, and Harrow the Ninth, and I don't really want to read Harrow the Ninth because that's also another chunky book. I mean, I've also got, actually, I've got Hannibal Rising as well. Prince Lestat, which I don't really want to read yet. You know what, actually, I think Hannibal Rising that might be a good option. So let's finally read that, and then I finish the whole Hannibal cycle. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna read this one. I don't think it's super long either, not compared to some of the other ones. Well, it's about 300 pages, that isn't too bad. So yeah, we'll read that, and then I finally finished the series, which is great, because I really wanted to do that this year. So I finally finished the Hannibal cycle, which is 4 books, and this is Hannibal Rising, which is a prequel book. They've made a movie of it as well, which I haven't seen yet. And I went into it a little bit not sure if I was going to like it or not, because I recently read Hannibal and I just didn't really like it that much. I loved Red Dragon, I loved Silence of the Lambs, but I didn't like where the story went in Hannibal at all. So, and I've heard a lot of people saying this is just kind of like a cash grab book, really. Like, he didn't really need to write this book. It was fine as it was, but people were just clamoring for more Hannibal, essentially. So he wrote a prequel book, which is basically about Hannibal growing up, what happened to him, and how he became the person that you see him in the later books in the series. And yeah, I didn't like it, unfortunately. 2.5, 2.75. Honestly, for a book that was supposed to be about Hannibal, there was not enough Hannibal. I didn't love the story of him growing up and his weird relationship with his uncle's wife, but I could have kind of dealt with that if that was the whole of the story, if we'd really been sort of invested and centered in on that, even though I thought the relationship was really creepy. But actually a lot of the book was just looking at these other guys who sort of ruined his life and what they're up to in their various unsavory criminal activities. And I didn't care. You know, I didn't want to spend all this time looking at these characters who were horrible, knowing that they're just going to get killed anyway, because of course they were. You know, it's what you knew was going to happen. That is the thing, unfortunately, of it being a prequel book. You know that Hannibal is going to come out of this not unscathed, but he is going to come out of it, so nothing they do to him is going to have any weight. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. I found it really hard to get through. I pushed myself through it because I was determined to finish this book, but I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the plot or anything, so yeah, unfortunately, not one for me. Hello. What are you looking at? Pigeons. Okay, I think this might be my last roll for the month, depending on how I go with reading. If I don't get book club book in this one, I definitely have to read it. So yeah, this might be the last roll. Depending on what I get, I might be able to fit another one in this month, so let's see. So we are on community shelf at the moment, so let's roll and see how we go. I haven't had any doubles yet, so it'd be interesting if I got doubles at this point. I did! Oh, I got 2 ones. Okay, so I guess I have 2 books left on this TBR now, so right, 1, 2, TBR veteran we have, so one that has been on my TBR for a very long time. Okay, so none of these, because I've got these fairly recently. Diary of Blood, I really want to get to. I don't want to read Prince Lestat at the moment. Honestly, I think the one that's been on here the longest is The Hollow Tree. I got this from a horror book box a while ago, and I haven't got to it yet. So yeah, I think it might be that one. If not that, then I think it's probably going to be the first volume of Dance in the Vampire Bund, because I've had this series for absolutely ages. And this is technically a reread, but I read it so long ago, I don't remember what it's about that much, other than that I know I liked it. So it's between those two. So I guess find out in the actual blog which one I read. If I'm pushed for time, is probably going to be Dancing the Vampire Bund, which, as I now have to roll again, might be the case. So I don't have a whole lot to say about this one because it's a reread for me. I already knew what was going to happen, but I did read it 5-6 years ago. Originally, I had the whole series basically that I bought of a friend, and I've only read the first couple of volumes before. This was just kind of like a nice easy one to start getting me back into the series, and then I'll hopefully end up reading the rest of it. There are some artistic character design choices in this series that I'm not fond of, so I'm not really going to show you any pictures from this. It's a little bit problematic, basically because this whole story is about a boy who is kind of like, comes from this family background of serving like the vampire princess. So he is kind of assigned to this vampire princess who had just arrived to Japan, and she just kind of looks like a little girl. It's that Japanese anime trope of this person who's like, 1,000 years old and she's trapped in the body of a little girl. And unfortunately, the author does choose to sexualize her a lot. There's a lot of skimpy clothing, there's a lot of nakedness, honestly, which I didn't need to see. And I liked the story aside from that. If I look past it, which is hard to do, I enjoy the story. It's very mature. It's a lot about politics, and what she's doing in this story is very interesting, about her trying to create this haven for vampires and all the problems that come with it. And I do find the main guy, he is alright. I don't find him annoying or anything. But yeah, I'd forgotten how problematic this series is. I still want to finish reading it because the thing is, I enjoy the main story of this. I just don't like when the author sexualizes Mina, even though she is an adult technically. She looks like a young girl, and I don't like how that's done. So yeah, there's an ick factor with this one, basically. But I can't remember, I think I probably gave it 3. Yeah, like a mid-3. It starts off the series well. It lays the groundwork, it sets the world up. It gives us some info about the characters while setting up some of the mysteries. So overall I liked it, but yeah, just bear in mind there's a reason why this is probably a series that not many people talk about, even though it's got a good story, and it's probably because the artwork just kind of pushes those boundaries a bit too much. Let's do this again. Oh god, okay, thank god I did not get another double. Close, but that's an 11. So, quite a big one. Alright, let's see. Ooh. Are we out of the woods yet? Okay, so this one is basically to read something that is set or takes place near the woods or like a really rural area or has a tree on the cover. Sadly, there are no trees on this book, which is very sad. There's a very out of the way looking like a city. Yeah, I don't think this one's gonna cut it, so this is just going to be an extra book I read this month, I guess. Funnily enough, the hollow tree will probably work for this, but I don't know if I'm going to have time to read it. So let's have a look what shorter options we've got. Nope. Ooh. Hide. Wow, okay, so I apparently accidentally clicked the button, so you didn't see me going through every single one of these books and pulling them out, but I decided not to go with the hollow tree, even though there's obviously trees on it, because it's a bit long. The Lonely also had some trees, but I'm not feeling that one at the moment. And there were a few other books here that had trees on them, but I narrowed it down to these 3. So, The Devouring Grey, The Cabin at the End of the World, and Hide. So, I think I took off Devouring Grey because I'm not in the mood for this right now, and it gives me winter vibes, honestly. So, that got me down to Cabin at the End of the World and Hide, and I really do want to read both, but I think at the moment, Hide is the one that's calling to me, so I'm gonna go with this one. So, Hide. I hadn't heard great reviews about this, honestly, so even though it's one that I love to pre myself so much, basically it's about this young girl and a bunch of other people as well. Well, young girl, she's probably in, like, her late teens, early 20s, Her and a group of other people are kind of sent to like what they think is going to be like a reality TV show competition game in this old abandoned amusement park, where all they have to do is try and hide during the day for like 7 days. And if they are not found during that time, then they win a cash prize. Of course, things are not as they seem, and there's another reason for why they've been brought here, essentially. This was a fun read, honestly. It didn't blow me away. It's not going to be one of my favourite books of the year, but I had a good time with it. It very much felt to me like I was watching a movie a lot of the time. Like, I feel like it may have just done better as a movie than as a book. That was maybe to its detriment. But I enjoyed the cast of characters, even the ones that were quite annoying, even those ones that were intentionally annoying. I enjoyed learning about them. I enjoyed seeing their perspectives. So I think overall, I just gave it a 3, basically. Nothing standout, nothing amazing, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time. It kind of just gave me what I wanted, which was, you know, a cat and mouse game which got dangerous. It gave me some interesting characters. So I really can't complain about this. I had a good time, and I'll probably pick up more books by this author to see what else she does, because I didn't hate this. Hello, so I just got in from being out in town all day with a friend, and we went and checked out Queerlit's new shop that's just opened up, because they've just moved from their very small little shop in Tibbs Street up to a much bigger venue. And of course, I had to get some books. And it's World Bookshop Day, so I got In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, because I really loved her other stuff. And I also managed to pick up a hardcover edition of The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which is fun. Okay, so we're back again. I've done quite a few rolls at this point, and I thought the last set of rolls was going to be my last one, but I've been getting through my books really fast this month, so I figured I'd try and do at least one more roll. I'm really wanting to try and get my book club book onto one of these, but basically I've been reading so fast. The only books I've got left to read from my rolls so far is Hyde and my big book. So, and I'm not really planning on finishing my big book this month. If I do, awesome, but I'm wanting to leave it until more towards the end of the month and try and read a few other little bits on the side that are more seasonal. So I'm gonna try another roll and see if that finally gets me my book club book, which I have to read. So it's currently the 16th of October, so we're about halfway through the month. I've only got the 2 books left and my book club book. And my book club book is supposed to be read in a week and a half's time. Let's see if my next roll will get it for me, or if it'll just get me another book, which honestly, with how quickly I've been reading this month, I've just been super into reading this month. I've had a lot more spare time, which is nice. I think I might be able to get at least another one in. So, fingers crossed. So yeah, we were currently on Are We Out of the Woods Yet, which I picked Hyde for. So let's see what this is going to give us. Ooh, a 6. Oh, you're kidding me. Black Cat again? Oh my god. I don't know if I can find another Black Cat, because I read the 2 books that had cats in them, because I've already done Black Cat, and then I ended up reading The Kiss Curse, sorry, not The Kiss Curse, The X-Hex, which I didn't realise also had a cat in it. So I might have to really look to try and find something now. I might look for a manga or something, because I'm pretty sure I have nothing on my TBR that has a black cat. So I'm gonna go investigate what is out there and see if there's some kind of manga I want to read that has a cat in it. Okay, an unexpected success. I forgot I have the Twisted Wonderland manga, which I really wanted to get to soon anyway, and there is most definitely a cat who is one of the main characters in this series. He is a little demonic-ish kind of cat called Grim that has magical powers and talks. So, yeah. That is my black cat pick. And amazingly, I've managed to keep this being an actual black cat. Again, because that's what he is. So yeah, I guess, Twisted Wonderland, here we come. So my second black cat roll, which was Twisted Wonderland, the first volume. So I am going to go into this with just a lot of bias, essentially, because I love the mobile game. I play it a lot with my friends, I cosplay from it. I do in fact cosplay this specific character here, Riddle. So I knew I was probably going to like this. It's not the same artist, which is Yana Toboso, who does like the character designs. It's a different artist, but I really like the artist style in this. I think it works really well for the character designs. I like the new character they introduce, who's basically like the protagonist, who is you in the mobile game, actually called you, funnily enough. But yeah, I love the art style for this. I think it worked really well for the characters and for the character designs. I like how much more in depth they went in certain things than I think the mobile game did. So the issue with the mobile game, I love the mobile game, it's got very long stories. The first story, however, is not. It's quite short, but it's more about setting up the game and teaching you the tutorial of how things work. And as such, the actual sort of storyline that deals with the complexity of the characters, particularly this character of Riddle, is underdeveloped. And you see that when you see what happens later on with other characters, that it wasn't developed enough. And I think that is something that they fix in the manga. So this only does the very beginning of the story. We've not properly got into where things really go down in this volume. That will happen in volume 2, I think. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was a really good adaptation, and I'm excited to sort of carry this on. So this would have been a high 4 for me. Not quite a 5 again, but that's mostly because it hasn't got to the plot yet, where I know things really get exciting and things really get going. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So if it's something that you're kind of interested in, I recommend checking it out because it works fine, even if you're not familiar with the game. I think it's a perfect entry point, and if you do like the game, I'd still recommend it because I think it does a really good adaptation, and it does more things with the story. It adds in extra scenes, that kind of thing, that you didn't see. Also, I can't believe they actually made me like Grim. He is incredibly cute in this one. I'm trying to find a picture of him. There's some really cute pictures of him, and now I can't find it. So I'm not a massive fan of Grim, who's like the cat, which is why I picked this book. In the game, I found him very irritating, but he's really cute in this, unexpectedly. I also really like how the artist draws Riddle, who is this boy on the cover here. They really captured him perfectly, and he looks so pretty as well, which I also appreciate. So yeah, that was that book. My black cat roll is definitely going to be a short one, so I may as well roll again and try one more time to get my book club book on here. So let's see what we get. Come on, board. Don't be mean to me. Okay, not a doubles. We have a 9, which is a nice high number. So let's see where we're going this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ooh, a Beckerec. Ooh, I've been wanting to get this one. Again, my book club book is not going to match for that, but I'm excited to go through some of Becca's videos and see if there's anything on my TBR that she has recommended, or if there's something else exciting that I can try out. So yeah, I guess that is the next roll. Will I carry on and do even more rolls this month? I guess we'll see. But for now, Beckerec. So, I think these are my 2 options for the Beckerec. I have Rebecca, funnily enough. And I know this is one of her favourites, although I was kind of hoping to keep it just in case I actually landed on the Rebecca Square. I know you don't need to read Rebecca for the Rebecca Square, but it seems too perfect. Or I have the first book of Clementine, which is not one that I think Becca's read, but I know she loves the Walking Dead graphic novels, and this is kind of a spin-off of that. So that is my other option. I guess tune in and see which one I end up picking. Whew, I've been talking so long. I'm actually losing my voice a little bit, so I'm still not quite over this cold that I've had for like the last week, so I'm a little bit croaky for the rest of this wrap up. I apologise. I obviously didn't expect to read as many books this month as I did. I didn't expect to roll as much as I did, as you're probably seeing with me rolling. I'm like, this will be the last roll for the month. And then I was just getting through stuff so fast that I just kept going. So, the next one was a Becca rec. I know this was technically cheating by me picking what I picked, but my theory is that I know that Becca likes The Walking Dead. I think she reads the comics and the novels. I'm not sure if she does or not, but I know she likes the TV series. So I figured, of what I had, she would want to read Clementine. So I don't have the physical copy because the library wanted it back. Putting a little graphic here. I am a fan of the Telltale games. I have watched some of the TV series, but I'm honestly not too far in. I am way behind. I got to about season 3 or something, I think. And I enjoy it. It's just so long that I just haven't really had the time to get back to it. But I really enjoy the Telltale games. I've played almost all of them, I think, at this point. So I really like Clementine as a character. And I was kind of excited to see this as like one of her like new interpretations of her adventures, which is set after the Telltale games, I think. And I really enjoyed this one. The art, I think, worked really well for the world of The Walking Dead. I gave this a 4-star, I think, by the way. It's not a very long series from what I remember. I think there's 2 books out. I think there's going to be a 3rd book, and that might be all there is. I'm not too sure. It's just going to be like a small, self-contained adventure, I think. But I really enjoyed this first book. It didn't go at all where I thought it was going to go. It still follows that kind of the similar story that you see so much in the Telltale games, where basically you're playing as a character and you're having to work out alliances with who to trust, who not to trust, that kind of thing. So it did follow that, but I really liked the setting for this one because basically it kind of starts off with like Clementine, she's got an injury recently and she kind of has to stop at this village for help, and I thought it was just going to be set there, or honestly it was just going to be her alone just going through the wilderness and surviving. And in fact, she ends up going away to this up to, I can't remember what it was, like in Canada or something, and up to this like an Arctic mountain top place, essentially, where she joined some people who are trying to build a settlement away from the zombies, because the idea is that the zombies can't survive in freezing temperatures, so they're trying to build a safe community for people to live out there. So it was about her going there with this other person who is quite naive, and Clementine is trying to protect him, basically, and kind of meeting there's like 3 people there currently trying to build this community and living there and what kind of happens. And I thought it was really interesting, honestly. I liked the characters that they brought into it. I did get emotionally attached to them, so I was emotional when things happened. That was sad, but I thought it was a really good setup. I maybe don't know if Clementine herself was actually the focal point of this story. I think it was more about the people on the mountain and what happened with them and the whole relationships going on between them all. But I still really enjoyed it, and I would honestly recommend it, I think, if you kind of want to know a little bit more about The Walking Dead, but you don't want something that maybe is going to have a million characters, or you don't want the commitment of the TV series. So yeah, I liked it. I would definitely pick up the next one in the book series. Okay, so I didn't think we were going to get here, but we are officially doing Roll 11. Our last one was a Becca rec, which I ended up picking Clementine for because it's a library book and I am trying to prioritize those right now. So let's see what we get for number 11. Oh, it's a doubles! Oh no! Well, that means that we're reading 2 more, I guess. Let's see what number 11 is first, and then I guess we're rolling for number 12. Oh, randomize your TBR. That's exciting. I've been wanting to try this one. So I'm gonna do a little screenshot in a bit of me doing a bit of a randomizer and see which one we get. Okay, so we are going to do our randomizer now to see what is the next book we're going to be reading. I have 26 books left in my sort of seasonal horror-ish TBR that I haven't gotten to yet. My book club book is still in here, so I'd love if it lands on that, but as we know, we have a 1 in 26 chance. So let's roll and see what we get. Ooh. Oh. Okay. Yeah, we're reading one of the ones that I almost picked up for something else and didn't get to. And it's also a graphic novel, which is really short. Yeah, not bad. We're almost at the end now. Even I'm getting tired, so if you're still here, thank you. Even if it's just to watch all the antics of the cat that I was pet sitting, because she is adorable. So, I read The Evil Within comic finally, thanks to my little randomizer that made me choose it. It's very short. I finished it in maybe half an hour or something. It's like 50 pages long. This isn't the first in the actual Evil Within graphic novels, I didn't realise. But as long as you kind of know the games, it doesn't really matter if you haven't read the previous ones. So, I love the video games, and I'm kind of sad to say that I didn't enjoy this. I found it very confusing, honestly. So it is a lot of the game, as well as being like normal survival horror, is psychological horror. And this went very hard into the psychological horror. And basically it was just kind of about the main character, Sebastian, who is a police detective, being kind of tormented by these kind of like things that happened to him in the past. And about this like serial killer who was kind of offing people who I think all had links to things that went on to events in the first game. And yeah, I just didn't like it. The art was okay, I'd say. Conceptually, I think it was more interesting than it actually is. It was just kind of fine. I didn't love it or anything though, but it felt too short. It felt like it wasn't really going anywhere, and I just didn't really know what it was trying to do, honestly. So yeah, it's a shame because I love the Evil Within series. It's one of my favourite horror games, but I just didn't really enjoy this one. So I don't know if there's more to this series or if this is a standalone. I think there are some others that are by different writers, artists, that maybe I'll check out just because I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens. Intrigued to see what they do with it, but for me this was not great, and I just came out of it just feeling very confused, and maybe I just didn't understand it and I have to reread it and then maybe I'll understand what they were doing a bit better, but it didn't work for me, so that was a miss for me, unfortunately. I think yeah, this was my 2.75, so yeah, this is another reason why I had one of the 2 ratings this month, unfortunately. So on to the unexpected roll number 12, because I rolled the doubles. Do not be another doubles. Okay, good. This is very low. 1, 2, oh, 300, under 300. A small book. Okay, that I can do quite easily. So let's have a look and see what the options are. I've dragged out the books that are under 300 pages to see what my options are. So we have Volume 1 of Fangs. I have Volume 2 as well. Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher, The Taking of Jake Livingston, and my most recent purchase, In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. I'm honestly pretty okay with any of these getting picked. If I had to pick, I'd probably go for fangs just because I borrowed this from somebody and I should probably give it back to them soon. But I'm pretty okay with any of these. I did pick my short more book, which was going to be The Taking of Jake Livingstone. But I've been watching The Fall of the House of Usher and I kind of wanted to read the original story just to kind of see where the basis was. And then I found that someone was reading it on YouTube, so I guess I'm kind of listening to that at the moment, and that's only about 50 pages. So I'm going to class that as my small book, and I'm going to do another roll because I need to take something to read with me on my commute to work, because the only other thing I've got left to read at this point is Swordcatcher, which I'm only about 70 pages in. But I really don't want to take that with me because it's so chunky, so I'm going to roll again and see if I can find something that's a little bit more not as massive to take with me. Okay, so my surprise under 300 pages pick, it was indeed very much below 300 pages. I finished it in maybe 2 sittings, I think, and I actually listened to it as an audio. So Edgar Allan Poe and a lot of his stories are now in the public domain, so this basically means that people can kind of use it as they wish. It also means that there are like people on YouTube who sometimes read old public domain stuff, and I managed to find one for somebody who was reading The Fall of the House of Usher. And I was just really interested to know the original story that kind of inspired the events of the series. I have read some Edgar Allan Poe stories before and I really like them, so I know I like his writing style, but this wasn't one I was familiar with, and I knew it was quite short, so yeah, I figured I'd just listen to it and see what it was about, really. And yeah, I liked it. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't my favourite of Poe's stories, I don't think. It's very simple in its premise. A lot of his are quite simple in premise. It's usually just like centered around one event, which this is. And I can see very much where the TV series took inspiration from it, but the TV series is kind of inspired by all of Poe's works. So it's not just going to be The Fall of the House of Usher. It takes it from various different stories, like The Pit and the Pendulum, The Telltale Heart. Ones that I like more, to be honest. This one was just fine. You know, it was creepy, it had good atmosphere, but it's not going to be up there in one of my favourites of Poe's stories, so I gave it a 3. Here we go. That is an 8. Oh, spoopy. So, from what I remember, this is kind of like a not entirely scary book, but something that kind of falls in with the vibes. So, I'm going to have a look at what library books need reading, to be honest, and pick something from that. Okay, so picking for spoopy, I've dragged out my 2 library books I really want to get to soon. This one just because it's on like my TBR for the Goodreads Fantasy Awards at the moment, and I think it does kind of fit the bill. It's sort of like a gothic tale about a witch. And then I've also got Wranglestone, which is something that I keep seeing around and I wanted to read, and it happens to have reserves on it already. So I think I'm going to be between these 2, but I'm not entirely sure which one. This one is apparently like a zombie LGBT story, which is just very intriguing. So yeah, I'm going to pick one of these, and that will be my spoopy book for the month. We are finally at the last book of this vlog, and it is Wranglestone by Darren Charlton. It's hard for me to rate this one. So for the first half of this book, I really enjoyed it. I was having a really good time. I loved the world setting, I liked the plot, I liked the 2 main characters who are in it, and the kind of surrounding cast of characters that are there. So basically, just to give you a quick summary, it is about the world essentially has kind of had a zombie outbreak, and there isn't very many people left in the world. And Peter, who is our main character, is a boy who lives in this kind of island community set apart from everywhere in the world called Wranglestone. He kind of has a crush on this other boy there called Cooper. They're very different. Peter's kind of mocked a lot by the other people as not being like able to survive very well in the world that they're in now. He's kind of mocked for being someone who's softer, who likes to crochet and do crafty things and creative things, whereas Cooper is kind of like that guy who they're like, oh, he's going to survive. But the two kind of form a bond together, and then together they end up finding out some dark secrets about what is really happening at Wranglestone. So I really enjoyed it for the first half, and then my rating dropped after that, unfortunately. So it's around the time I got ill, so I don't know how much of my thoughts of this last part of the book are because I was not feeling well and I was very feverish, so I wasn't concentrating very much, and how much was because I think the plot really just kind of dipped off. I was getting confused by what was happening. It seemed like things were just kind of skipping over plot points, and things weren't making as much sense, and the plot just kind of fizzled out. So yeah, I think that made me drop it down from a 4 to like a 3.5. I think in the end, I do want to carry this on because I did love this first part of it so much. And I've checked some reviews and stuff, and I have seen that people do share the same thoughts as me about the latter part of the book and how it kind of drops off and it doesn't work as well in the latter half. So I am gonna reread this at some point when I'm not dying of flu, just to confirm for myself what really happened. So I'm sorry that I'm not giving you the best review for this. I was just not having a great time towards the end of it, so I don't really trust my analytical abilities really for the latter half of this book. But I will say that I loved the first half of it. I picked it up actually when I just started Swordcatcher, and I was kind of struggling with Swordcatcher and how dense it was, and picking this up made me realise how dense it was, because it was just really refreshing to read this. It was like taking a drink of fresh water, because I was like, oh, this is so easy to read. I'm really just having a good time with it. So yeah, I loved the first half, and the second half just didn't work for me, unfortunately, but I will reread it at some point because I liked it enough that I want to give it a second chance, and I will be picking up a second book in the series just because I want to know what happens. So I forgot to actually show all the books together, so let's see if I can get them all in frame. Oh my god, I'm gonna drop these. Okay, balance. There we go. That is pretty much all the books Let me put this down and reshuffle a bit. Okay, there we go. So this is pretty much all the books. I know I haven't quite finished Swordcatcher yet, and I'll put little graphics here for the books that I do have physical copies of, but yeah, it was a pretty good reading month. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm gonna put this down because ow. So yeah, that is my wrap up for October and for the Spookopoly blog. For the Spookopoly roles that I did, I had a really good time, honestly, reading all these books in October. I read a varied amount. I managed to like tick off some books that have been on my TBR for quite a while, and although I didn't like read anything that was a 5-star, I read a lot of books that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I had a good time, and I'm very much looking forward now to the last 2 months of the year and just kind of like finishing off books that are ones I wanted to get to this year, ready for the new year refresh. So that's it from me. If you stayed this long, thank you. Feel free to leave a like or whatever and write down if there were any books that you really loved in October. If there's any books that I read in this that you also really liked or you think I should give another try if there were ones I didn't like. But until next time, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!